Hi everyone, I'm Kim Kroeker of Stampin' with Kim Arlene, and I am from the suburbs of Vancouver on the west coast of Canada, and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. Today I want to show you a really cool fun fold card, and it is called a center step card because it has a center panel and it has a little bit of a step out the front and it stands up like that. And I think it's pretty cool. It's fairly easy to make. And I am going to be using the Oceanfront stamp set with this. Now, this is a really cool stamp set for all sorts of scenery. I'm going to be using all of the stamps except for the two rocks. And if you want any of the measurements for this, I will try and put them below, but they will also be in my blog. And there will be a tutorial there as well. All right, so let's get started. Okay, we are going to start with a card base that is blueberry bushel, and it's going to be 4 1/4 by 11 inches long. Now we're going to be cutting this. This is the trickiest part of the card. It's not really tricky, but you do have to be a little bit careful. I'm going to show you a diagram of how we are going to be cutting it. And let's see, there we go. So it is 4 1/4 for the width of the card. I've tipped it so it fits better into the picture here, by 11 inches long. We are going to be making 2 cuts along 3/4 of an inch from each edge, and the cut is going to go from 1 inch away to 6 1/2 inches, and that's going to go on each side. Then the dotted lines here are folds, and I'll explain that as we go along. And I will have this diagram in my blog if you want to go and have a look at that, or you can pause the video. Hopefully that'll make sense. Okay, so we are going to use the paper trimmer. Okay, so I'm going to put the paper in my trimmer, and I am going to measure it at 3/4 of an inch. And that I'm measuring on the right-hand side of the blade, the way I normally use my trimmer. I've got it sideways so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to set my blade at 1 inch, and I'm going to slide that along till 6 1/2 inches. So that's from 1 inch to 6 1/2 inches, 3/4 of an inch away from the one side of the paper. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to put this at 3/4 of an inch, set my blade in at 1 inch, and then I'm going to slide my blade along again, starting at 1 inch. So I'm not starting at the very edge, and I'm going to slide it along to 6 1/2 inches. So when I take that out, I have 2 cuts in my paper that start 1 inch away from the top of my paper as I have it right now, and goes till 6 1/2 inches. I'm now going to move my cutting blade out of the way, and I'm going to use my scoring blade. And I want to cut, I'll just show you this picture again for a minute. So what I've done is I have cut this one slit from 1 inch to 6 1/2 inches on both edges of the paper, and that is 3/4 of an inch away from the edge. I'm now going to score at 5 1/2, which is my usual scoring for a vertical fold card like this, but just between the 2 cuts. I'm going to make a fold at 6 1/2 inches, which is at the end of that cut, and then 2 folds, 2 score lines at 1 inch away from the left edge of the paper and 2 inches away from the edge, and the same at the other side of the slit at 1 inch and at 2 inches. All right, so let's do that. Turn this here. So I'm going to set my paper edge at 1 inch, and I'm going to use my scoring blade, and I just want to score from the cut to the edge of the paper on both edges. So cut to the edge of the paper. So if I show that to you, I've overdone that just a little bit there, but you should be able to see the score line goes to the cut, the score line goes to the cut, and I'm going to do that at 2 inches as well. Now, it's easier if you can get your head over top of this so that you're scoring exactly where you need to be. But if I do that, you won't see what I'm doing. So again, I've made now a second score line, and this is just from the cut to the edge. This is 1 inch up and 2 inches up at both sides. Then I'm going to go up to 5.5 inches. And this is not the end of my cut line. This is going to go here, which is my normal scoring place for a vertical fold card. And I'm just going to score that part between the two cut lines. And then I'm going to slide to 6.5 inches. And I'm going to do from the edge to the cut again. So just to the cut, and then from the cut to the outside edge again. So this is what it looks like in the center part. I've got my usual 5.5 inch score, but not all the way through, just between the two cuts. And then at the top of each of those cuts, I've got the amount, the edge scored from the outside edge to the cut line. And then I'll just move my trimmer out of the way. And I will need my scoring tool. And this is going to be a mountain fold. And this down here is going to be, these two front ones are going to be mountain folds and then valley folds. So it's mountain valley at the front of each. And then these are mountain ones at the top. So when you've got it folded, just want to try and even up those edges at the bottom. This is called a center step fun fold card. Okay, so then we have the back, which looks like this, and then the front, which has the center part out a little bit more, and then it just stands up like that. Okay, folks, it seems I'm having some audio issues, so rather than make it painful for you to listen to, I'm going to do my best to describe what's going on in the background here. The tricky part is done. The next part we're going to do is to grab some pieces of basic white cardstock. We'll need 3 for the front, a 2 5/8 by 4 3/8 inch piece, and 2 smaller ones that are 5/8 of an inch by 4 3/8 of an inch tall, and that will be for the side panels. We're going to start with basic gray and the bird stamp. Now the bird stamp is from the Waves of Inspiration. I'm doing this first because I learned the hard way that this very small stamp is super easy to get a halo on it. So rather than do all of the work and then have the birds wreck the whole thing at the end, I thought it would be smarter to do the birds first. Be really careful when you're stamping those that you don't rock them at all, which is what I did, and it ruined it. So there we've got our 2 small birds. We'll tuck the basic gray away, and we are going to go next with the balmy blue. I always use a Pierce mat with photopolymer stamps because it helps the stamp to make a much better contact with the paper. So I'm stamping with the balmy blue. This is the sky stamp, and I'm stamping about a 1/2 inch from the top right over the birds. I love the Oceanfront stamp set because it's one of our what we call distinctive stamp sets, which gives a real variation in the depth of color because of the texture on the stamp itself. So you get dark blue, you get light blue, quite a variation, and it really is very effective for just using one stamp. Now we're going to do the water in Tahitian Tide. This is a brand new stamp pad and it's super inky. So when I start out with this one, I am going to try it on the Pierce mat to make sure it is not too inky. If you have too much ink with one of our distinctive stamps, it doesn't stamp like you want it to. It gets a little blobby instead of showing that variation of color. And I'll show you what to do if you've got a super inky ink pad in a minute. Now I am overlapping these slightly as I put them on, so the sky overlaps the water a little bit, which overlaps the crumb cake sand. I missed a little part there, so I'm just going back and pressing it again to get that spot that I missed. Okay, that looks better. Now, if you have a really inky ink pad, what you do is you take a bone folder and then sort of smoosh all of the ink over to one side of the ink pad. And then what I do is I will stamp in the part that I've pushed away right there rather than in the inky part. All right, our water's done. Next thing we're going to do is the sand, and we'll be doing the sand in crumb cake. And again, I'm going to overlap this stamp a little bit over top of the water. Because it's got a sort of a zigzaggy edge, it doesn't necessarily cover completely, so you'll have a little bit of white spots. Now with the two side pieces that we have, because the side pieces are at a different level than the other part, as you can see by looking at that, I want to move those strips down a little bit and just try and get the horizon even, so that if I move it down a little bit there, I'll know to do the balmy blue at the top straight across from where it is on the centerpiece. I'm being lazy and stamping over both of them at the same time. Okay, that's better. And back to Tahitian Tide. And again, I'm going to overlap that slightly. And then we'll do the crumb cake. Now I'm actually going to turn this one up this way so I can get a little bit more. And I'm going to stamp that 2 or 3 times just to fill that in. And I'll do the same on this one. And then I'm going to keep that out. And I want that little texture stamp. And I just want to add a little bit of texture to the sand. And before I do this one, I think I'm going to do my little grass. And I'm going to do the grass, the smaller grasses I'm going to do in Old Olive. So I'm just going to put this one, oops, well, that's funny. It's stuck into my stamp pad. I hadn't put it very carefully onto the block. Okay, so I'm going to put this grass over here, and then I'm also going to put some grass on, oops, on one of the side panels. And then I'm going to get the mossy meadow for the taller grass. And this is the third super tall grass. And I'm just going to put that off to the side. Okay, there we go. And the reason I was leaving that is so that I can put a little bit of the texture at the base of those grasses. All right. Close up all of my stamps. And actually, I've got one more stamp that we need to do. Goes off to the side, and that is our sentiment. And the sentiment I got from Waves of Inspiration. And hang on, that's not it. Sorry. The bird was from Waves of Inspiration. And this one is Thank You for Your Kindness from Dainty Delight. The Oceanfront stamp set does not have any sentiments with it. But I find I've got tons of sentiments in other stamp sets, so it hasn't been a problem. All right. And I'm doing the sentiment in Blueberry Bushel. Something on this one. I'm not going to use this one. And hopefully I've got an extra here somewhere. All I know I do, it's just can I find it? There we go. All right, and then it's just pretty much a case of gluing this all together. Before I glue it though, I do want to show you, I'm going to put some twine around here. Now, what I did is there is actually a really nice twine that's a white, and it's with the in colors that you can buy them, and it's got 5 of them in a package. I don't have any of those yet, so I'm going to use the Baker's Twine Essential Pack, and this one has 5 neutral colors. It's white, black, vanilla, crumb cake, and sort of a taupey color. Can't remember what that one is called. And I'm going to use the white. But I did want Tahitian Tide. So I have a Tahitian Tide blends. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just color it. And I'll use the wider end of the blends. It's like the brush end. And basically what I'm going to do is just hold my pen and pull the twine. And I'm going to use 12 inches of twine. So you can do that. It's kind of nice to be able to do that because then you have whatever color of twine you want. Sorry, my lid just fell off my blends and went under the desk. Okay, so I've already got some of that cut. So I'm going to put this around near the bottom. That out of the way. Okay, now some people are fabulous at tying bows. I am not one of those people. So I'm going to get a little bit of help from some reverse tweezers. And that's just going to hold that in position for me while I tie a bow. Slightly off center here, so it's not working out exactly as planned. Okay, I think that should be okay. And I want this a little more to the left, so I'm just going to curl my paper, slide it over a bit. It's about 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch from the bottom. And it's not really cooperating for me. This is my life with bows. All right, and then we're going to put these on our card base. Now, easiest if you just pull that out straight. And I'm just going to grab my silicone mat. I'm really bad for leaving my glue open on my desk. And sometimes it just plugs up. That's not going to work. So I have a pin handy, which comes in very handy. Well, I might be using my seal. There we go. Now with the measurements that I've given you, it's just basically a 1/16 of an inch margin around here. I just want a tiny little bit of a border on these. And then I'm going to take my 2 edges and decide, I think I want the one with the higher sandbank on the left, since that sandbank is at a bit of a tilt. All right, and last one. And then we've got our sentiment to go at the bottom on the front, on that step out the front. And then I have a piece of paper of basic white cut for the inside as well. And that one is 4 inches wide by 4 1/4. And then I'm going to get some rhinestones. Now, we don't have Tahitian tied rhinestones, and we do have some in color pearls, but unfortunately I do not have them. So I decided I would use some rhinestones. And I found out recently, maybe you guys already know this, but I thought this was really cool. I found out that you can color the rhinestones with your blends, with the alcohol blends. So I've already done 2 here. I don't know if you can see. They're a little hard to see that those 2 are colored. When I do that, I'm going to cap my glue. When I do that, I use the bullet end, like the felt pen side of the blends. I think if you use the brush end, it would kind of have a tendency to wreck the brush end on your blends, so you don't want to do that. And then I'm just going to get these, and we'll put the larger one by itself over here in the water, and then the two smaller ones in the sky. And I'm one of those people that always puts the embellishments in threes, so it'd be 3 rhinestones or 5 rhinestones. And there you go. And this opens up like that. You could do some stamping on the inside if you like. And this is a center step fun fold card. All right.
So I hope that you enjoyed that card and that you will try it out. And it's kind of a fun fold. I wanted to let you know too that I've got my blog address here. All of the measurements and a tutorial for this card are in my blog, and you can find that by clicking on the photo below this video and going to the About tab. I did also want to mention that Stampin' Up! Has a 15% off sale on a select number of printed papers. There are 13 of them, some really nice ones. And if you don't presently have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and you live in Canada, I'd love to help you out with that. My shopping link is also in the About tab. And if you watched this video and you enjoyed it and you found it helpful, I hope that you will like it and subscribe, and that I will see you again soon. Thanks so much for dropping in. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.